Okay, now what I'm going to do is with this one half of the model selected, I'm just going to come up to UV. I'm going to go to UV editor. Okay. Now you'll notice it has UVs in there from the initial UVs that were assigned to the basic tools that we had, right? But we want to go ahead and create our own UVs. And to do that, we're going to need to delete the UVs that are in here. So I'm going to go to Edit, Delete. Okay, and I'll delete those UVs. Now this is not required for this portion of the assignment, but I want to show you the process so you kind of see, oh, that's how things are done when they're UV'd. I also, on my model right here, I'm going to go ahead and smooth this out because with texturing, we'll be able to get away with making this look a lot more angular. So to do that in Maya, I'm going to click my model and then just go to Surfaces. I'm sorry, Mesh Display, Soften Edges. I'll kind of soften everything. Even though it looks a little funky, that'll be okay once we bring it into Mudbox and we start doing flat texturing on it. So all that'll pretty much go away. Okay, so that looks good. Click on my model here. And an easy way to do UV unwrapping in Maya is to just literally UV the entire thing and then just make cuts and unfold as you go. That's kind of the quickest way to do it. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit UV planar. That's going to UV this entire model. There's a lot of things in here that are already kind of ready to go. But what you need to do is just make cuts to separate things out, okay? So what I mean by that is we've UV'd half the model. If I come in here and grab my face, you can see some of these are already separate because they were separate models. I can move these shells. You'll see as I select those, I have the shells that they UV'd off to the side, right? And again, this might be a little complicated, so don't worry about it. I will have this thing UV'd and ready for you if you just want to paint this. But if you want to give it a shot yourself, you can go for it. So I've got the main model, I've got those little grill pieces, and I've got my two little cylinders right here. So what UVing is we've taken a picture of our model, but now we need to make cuts to flatten out these pieces. These are kind of coordinates for where our textures are going to be projected onto the model. So when we start painting this model in textures, we need to kind of, all these polys, all these positions, right? They need to know what they're looking at in terms of what is called our UV space, which is this little square right here, right? So we need to make what are called shells that are positioned in this space that'll project whatever texture we eventually paint onto these specific models. But they have to be flat in order to do that. They can't be like a big contour shape like this, right? So to do that, and you'll see like these cylinders, right? It's not going to work because they're kind of stacked on themselves, right? We need to flatten those out. So almost like if you were unwrapping a present, right? If you were looking at the present but you wanted to see it flat on the ground, the wrapping paper, you'd have to unwrap it and flatten it out. That's exactly what we need to do for each of these pieces, okay? So what I'm going to do is come in here and make my cuts to do so. And typically you want to make your cuts to things that make sense, right? So for example, right here, and you do this by just selecting the edges. So I'm going to go, let's go ahead and do our cockpit. I'll click this part, this part, this part, this part, this part, and I will say edit, or I'm sorry, cut. So you'll see I've now made a shell. So I can take this piece, and you can select these by going to your UV toolkit. You can select these new shells that you've made and pull them away from your model. But it's still not flattened out. It's still a contour shape. So what we need to do is flatten that out. If I come in here and I go modify, unfold, or just Control U, that'll flatten that piece out, right? So now it's a flat piece, right? And I can preview it on my model of how the texture is going to look by hitting this little checker pattern. Hit the checker pattern, you'll see, oh, okay, that's how the texture is going to look on that particular part of the model, right? All kind of smooth and nice. Now, a lot of these other pieces, you see how they're like stretched and not looking good? That's because the model is not, all these pieces aren't flattened out, right? And typically what we do for this process is I'll go through the entire model, I'll select each piece, make my shells, flatten them out, and then I'll organize all those shells in my UV space, okay? So in here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to select, we'll just do the side panel right here. Whoops, I'm sorry, grab my edge tool. And we'll just make a cut for this side panel. So maybe I'll take the front of this vent right there. Cut that bottom. And we'll just go right up to the top right there. So we'll get this whole piece. And we'll say cut, cut. So it gives us that piece. Can then come in and select that piece. Move it away from the model, and then go Control U. Fold it out. See how now it's unfolded? It's that whole piece. And if I check it, right? Oh, texture pattern looks good. It's not stretched, not weird. This interior part, that's its own piece. We can go ahead and stretch that out. So I can go Control U. Hold on. There we go. Control U. Now you'll see that one didn't stretch great because I didn't make any cuts into the model to help it unfold a little bit better. And you can do that by just coming in, clicking some edges, making some cuts. And then we'll go back to selecting that particular shell, Control U. There you go. That smooths it out. You want to get this nice checker pattern wherever you're at. And eventually, when we're done with all our shells, we want to get pixel density the same on every one of our shells, so they should all have the same checker pattern size. Let me go ahead and turn that off so I can see what I'm looking at. And so I'm just going to go around my model and get these different edges. So maybe I'll do the wing next here, go all the way around the wing. And I'll make a cut down the back side of it right here to really like fillet it open, right? Something like that. We'll cut, cut. We'll go to vertex selection, and then, oh, we need to cut this bottom tank, whatever I had on the bottom of this thing out. So we'll come here, edge, we'll get this whole thing. And we want to cut that too. So let's do that. Cut, cut. Let's move this off to the side. We'll modify, unfold, grab our wing, modify, unfold. All right. That's a little bit of a weird unfold right there, so we just need to make some other cuts in that wing. That's as easy as literally coming into either this part of the model or the actual model itself, going to your edge mode and saying cut, right? And here we can grab our model again and say modify, unfold. It's looking a lot better. All right, we can test it. That's looking good. All right. Cylinders are easy. You typically just need to make one cut in the cylinder. Actually two. We need the center of the cylinder, and then we're just going to make one line down the side right here. To get that, and I'll go cut, cut. Now, the other thing I like to do is just go around my model, make all my cuts, and then unfold everything at once. Then I can see what's messed up. All right, so I got that one. I'll do this bottom one right here. Grab one of these inner seams. You always want to try to choose seams that you're not necessarily looking at the whole time. Go here, cut, cut. All right. And for the rest of the model, let's come in here. Actually, let's cut out these little tank things on the top. Cut that out. Let's see. cut out this little air intake here. Out. Let's see if there's any other issues. Cut out this back little rocket. Cut that out. Cut. And again, probably the interior of it as well. Cut. Great. Now, anytime you have a corner, you just want to make a cut down one of the seams like that, just to give it room so it can open up. And anytime it goes in like that, get a little air intake, you want to cut that out too, just so it's separate. And cut the corners, just like if it were a box, right? You need to cut the corners so you can fold it out properly. All right, so do that. And we'll say cut. Now I'm just going to select everything, see how this goes. Everything, and we'll go modify, unfold. Just take a look at our model really quickly. Oh, these little cube guys are probably giving us grief right here, so we'll go ahead and change those. Yeah, because they have these sides still in them. Let me fix that really quickly. Can't seem to get them. All right, hold on. Let's go here. We'll go to edge mode. There we go. These edges. There we go. So cut. There we go. Just going to get those so we can fold these, unfold those properly. Come in here. Modify, unfold. There we go. And let's see how everything looks. Here was 5. A little bit of stretching, but I think we're going to be able to get away with this. Let's see. That looks pretty darn good. Okay. So we'll say that this is great for our model right here. You know, this needs a little bit of... it's going to be fine. I'll make a little cut in there. Edge. Let's go cut. I'm looking for, you know, where stretch textures are happening, things like that. There's one up here on the cockpit. You might want to get that. Cut. There we go. And then we can just select all of our models, or all of our shells, and then go modify, unfold, just to kind of unfold those. And that helps us out a little bit. Let's get cleaner UVs. Okay. Now with everything selected, this looks pretty good. I'm going to select all these shells. I'm just going to go to modify, layout, click the options box, and in here we have this preserve UV ratios. This will make everything the same size in those shells, which is really great. We could do, everything's good there. All this is good. Texture map size, we'll make it 1024. And shell padding 25. That means we're going to have 25 pixels between each of our shells. This is all great. We'll click apply. And that lays out all of those UVs into our scene. All right, that looks pretty good. You know, I'm almost thinking like maybe I should cut this piece out a little bit more. It's just it's a little big to have all that together. We'll just come in here and just kind of clean this up. Let's take out this top part. Grab those, cut, and maybe just take this piece out too. There we go. Now I can take this. There we go. Grab all these, modify, layout, apply. There we go. Now one of the things that's really powerful with Maya is the way to arrange it. This is kind of, I don't know, messy the way that these are laid out. If we go into our modify, our layout section, layout along, or I'm sorry, orient shells, if we click orient shells, it'll try to like orient them so they look a little bit nicer. I go modify layout, and I'll try to put everything together so it's a little bit cleaner, so your angles are easier to paint and things like that. And that's just going to your modify, orient shells, and then layout. Okay, so that's good. And it's always nice to have a little bit of extra room in your UV texture as well if you need to add stuff to it later on in your texture map. But this is looking pretty darn good. Yeah, I think I'm good with this. Check out our model real quick. Everything looks solid in terms of the texture density. It's all the same size. That's exactly what we want. Great. Now what we can do is grab our model, and now that it's UV unwrapped, I can just like we did before, Control D, and I can scale it the opposite direction by going to my channels and just do -1. This is one way. Do that, right? Another way, which is a little bit easier, is if we click our model and then we go mesh, and is it mesh? Hold on, edit mesh. Looking for the mirror function. Let me see. Mirror, okay. If I go to the mirror function, oh, that didn't really work. Usually that works and we're able to just flip the entire mesh, but I think because we've added pieces onto it, it's not really liking that. Well, let me check it really quickly. Let's go to mesh. Mesh, we'll go to here, let's see. Cut geometry. We want to go in the combine with original. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I just had to take off that cut geometry. So you see when you do that in the mirror function, it'll mirror it, but it'll also just stitch it all together. So you don't have to worry about trying to fix it. So that's nice. So there we go. Really, really easy fix, right? Just by using the mirror function, because we had it already cut. You click that, you're ready to go, right? There's our ship all sewed together and nice. And each side uses the same UV. So if I go to my UV editor, you'll see we still have just that single set of UVs. So I can paint on one side and it'll show up on the other. Okay, so this is great. Ship's done. Now it's time to export. In order to do that, and what we're going to do is bring this into Mudbox, which is this application. And Mudbox is basically considered the painting application for Maya. So if you're ever wondering, like, what is Mudbox? What does it do? You can sculpt, you can do all kinds of things in it, stuff we'll get into later. But for basic painting purposes, if you want to paint models, this is the program to do it. Behaves a lot like Maya, and you can just bring your objects in after they have to be UV unwrapped for it to even work. You bring them into Mudbox and you can paint them up. So we've got our little ship here. I'm going to click this guy and I'm going to export him out. I'm just going to name him real quick instead of P cylinder. We'll call it ship. And what I'm going to do is save my scene. And I'll just save it to my desktop. Make a new folder. We'll just call it ship. Sorry, I've got a lot of 3D projects I'm working on right now. Ship. Come in here. We'll just do ship. We'll save our file. I'm also going to export it as an OBJ. So I'm going to export all. I'm going to go down to OBJ in my ship folder. I'm just going to call it ship. And Mudbox works with OBJs. Don't ask me why they don't accept FBX yet. They just don't. But OBJs work. So make sure you're at OBJ export. OBJ export. And we're going to say export all. And you'll see at the bottom results. Kitticolt desktop ship ship.obj. Kitticolt is my designer name from a long time ago. Okay, so that's all good. We got that all set up. Now I'm going to open Mudbox. And if we did everything correctly, this should come in fine. So I'm in my scene, and when you first open Mudbox, you might get a dialog box. Just close it. Don't close Mudbox, but just close that initial box that pops up. We're going to import in stuff separately. So in here, inside of Mudbox,